Welcome to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. The podcast that covers all things about humans, technology, and particularly the bit in between.
And welcome to this episode of 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. Today we're chatting with an old friend of the show about their experience as president of the CIEHF. But before that, firstly, thank you for all of your support and messages on us reinvigorating the 1202 podcast. Your messages following the interview with Matt Odell have confirmed that we've made the right decision to get back in the saddle. And in the future, if you've got comments, thoughts, please do get in touch with them. We do read and try and engage with you as much as we can, because there's no point in us doing this if we're not delivering what it is that you find interesting. So if you've got ideas, if you've got questions, if you've got thoughts, or even maybe changes in the way we do stuff, get in touch. Along with these updates, you might have noticed that the website has had to change. As has been mentioned previously, the 1202podcast.com got hacked, or somebody else decided to do some funny things with it. So now we are on 1202pod.com, and all them changes seem to have propagated through. So that's fantastic. So you'll see us there, as well as all the usual channels. But also don't forget to tell your friends about that change. In more positive news, the next year, the IEA Triennial is coming to London. So it's going to replace the Ergonomics and Human Factors Conference for that year, for 2027. So it's really time to start thinking now about what are you going to bring to that international audience. I can't wait to go there. I've never been to the IEA Triennial. So I'm quite looking forward to seeing what that looks like and how we can engage with it, and just how is it different to EHF. I mean, apart from the fact it's going to be bigger, it's going to be in London, and it's going to have a lot more people there. But what does that flavour look like? What does having that international audience there as part of your presentation do to the questions you get, to the uptake you get, and how do we collaborate differently? Slightly close to home, the CIEHF AGM will soon be upon us, with the opportunity to put yourself or nominate others to be on the council, in the executive, or on the professional affairs board. If you're a CIEHF member, and I would give it some serious thought about standing, because fundamentally it's your institute. And if it's not doing what you need or what you think it should be doing, or not providing you and supporting you in your career, then maybe you need to do something about it. Maybe there's no better way to make change than for you to step up. Just maybe today's guest will give you some insights on what might give you that motivation about taking that step. So to look back at today, we're talking to the current president of the CIEHF, Martin Thody. He's no stranger to the podcast. He's been a guest on 2 previous occasions, in 2019 and 2020, talking about CPD when he was the CPD lead. And he was the very first in-person interview that I did in this channel, in a rather cold and murky flat in Barrow-in-Furness, with a cobbled together interview setup that I bought off random bits off eBay, and still trying to work out how to make it all happen and what to do. And thankfully he, with his patience and his support and in his basically the ability to deal with me trying to mess up what to do, he gave me a lot of confidence to go on doing these type of interviews and engagement. But that was 5 years ago, and a lot has happened in 5 years. Not least of which that we're actually on YouTube now, as well as doing the audio. So I'm very grateful that he's come back to join us, fill in on what he's been up to, and about his experience as CIEHF president. So without further ado, Martin, welcome back to the podcast. And let me just make the buttons work. Welcome back to the podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much for that. Rather extraordinary welcome, Barry. I really appreciate that, and I really appreciate you inviting me back. 5 years ago, long time, and as you say, an awful lot has happened. But yeah, very privileged and humbled in a way that you've invited me in the first place. All those 5 years ago, you invited me back a second time, and you've been crazy enough to invite me back a third time. So I appreciate that.
The craziness, maybe the craziness is you. That's maybe there. I mean, normally we would go into a background introduction. How do you find human factors and things like that? But there was also 2 episodes back in the back catalogue that explain your human factors journey to a certain extent. But that only goes up to 2020, 5 years ago. So at that time, you're a contractor, you're running your own company, you were the lead on in the professional affairs board looking at CPD. What are you up to now? What's going on in the 5 years?
So yeah, I was a contractor 5 years ago. I'm still working for the same company that I was 5 years ago as a contractor. But 4 years ago, there was an opportunity to become part of the staff. One of the engineering managers resigned and moved on, and it was like many aspects of my career right from the very beginning. It was very serendipitous. The planets aligned. I was looking to finish my contract about the same time that they moved on, and I thought it was what a great opportunity to join the company. So yeah, I joined as a engineering manager, responsible for probably about 15 people, and then over the last 3 years, moved out of the engineering manager stream into engineering consultant, which has brought me right back into the technical capability, technical leadership stuff. So it's more in tune with my skills, I guess, and my interest. And I've actually got promoted as well. So I'm now the senior engineering consultant for the business that I'm in.
That's really cool. That switch from contractor to back into permanent roles again, I guess in some ways encouraged by the government to a certain extent through the IR35 issues, which we won't necessarily go into here. Mm-hmm. But how did you find that jump from contractor to permanent employee again? What were the things that you found that made it good, bad, indifferent?
I think most of it has been good. I see it as a very positive move. I mean, there's the obvious question about the money. Obviously, contractors generally get paid more than employees, but with the changes to IR35, that wasn't such a big deal. And where I am now, working on extremely complex defense programs, I was figured that if I can't get what I want from the human factors role in this organization, then I'm perhaps not going to get it elsewhere. So it kind of made sense. It was a bit of security for what will ultimately be my last job. So that was very positive, that it provided that security. It also provided me with sort of a more formal responsibility to do the mentoring, develop capability, which I was doing as a contractor, but it was kind of a little bit of an add-on to my sort of contract in itself. And it was an opportunity to have more involvement in the strategic direction of the team, which I've actually been enabled me to be quite instrumental in moving from where we were when I joined to where we are now, having sort of grown the team to, I think we're at 51 now in our human factors capability, which is, I'm fairly confident that that's the largest human factors group in the country, if not in perhaps Europe. So
that's a very different position to being the lone contractor. It's an exciting being part of a team. I think that size. But obviously since that first interview, we've had that little thing called COVID,
indeed,
and do its thing. When we were working together pre-COVID, everything was in person. You spent a lot of time traveling up to Barrow on a weekly basis so you could work, and because nothing could be done remotely, nothing could be done in that sense at all. Obviously, then COVID hit, and we all suddenly magically learned that things could be done remotely in a way that we hadn't envisaged, and barriers that were there suddenly disappeared out of necessity. How have you found it since then? Because you do work in I guess a highly secured area. How have you found that? Have you slipped right back to the old ways, or are you? How is it now more of a blend? How are you finding that?
So it is more of a blend now, and with all substantial change, and obviously COVID promoted a very substantial change in our working environment, but nationally, globally, in fact, in how work is done and where work is done. But again, I try and take the positives from it. So one of the things that the remote working and the hybrid working routines enabled was for us to grow the team, which was essential for us to do to deliver the work that we have. It was a challenge when we had to work in Barrow to attract people, and so that's kind of opened a big opportunity for us that we can recruit from across the country. And following on from opening our sort of opportunity to recruit with people working from home and working remotely, we've now got enough people in certain locations where we've got satellite offices as well. So people have got that opportunity to work from home or work in the office, sort of regardless of where they're located across the country, which has been a huge boon to us. But one of I think perhaps the biggest challenge, and the thing that I'm potentially most concerned about with how the team has changed, and I'm sure other teams experience it too, is particularly for the early careers. If they're working remotely, are they getting the benefit of the experience of working with those that are more experienced, working hands-on, getting involved in those little side conversations that just sort of and learning organically and by osmosis? Now they either have to be proactive and reach out, or it ends up actually being mostly reactive that they reach out. But there isn't the opportunity for those that are more experienced to provide that day-to-day oversight, which we had the opportunity to do that before when we were all in the office. You could see an early careers person might be struggling, might be just scratching their head, or the screen that they're looking at hasn't changed for a couple of hours. You just go and chat with them and ask them how they're getting on. We don't have that opportunity now. We don't have a view into someone's back bedroom to see how they're actually coping. So it's a bit of swings and roundabouts, and it's been big consideration in our sort of strategic direction. It's not just been about capability development. It's also about sort of looking after and protecting and supporting those people across the team, but particularly the early careers.
Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it? Because then I guess we call it the water cooler chats, or the coffee shop chats. That is harder now, and I've certainly noticed with my team there is still a desire. We could have gone completely remote and working from home offices and things like that, but there is a strong desire to actually going into the office is a fun thing, and it makes you, I think, appreciate that a lot more, because doing some of my other jobs and stuff, it's just not possible because of the travel. So when you've got it, I think you really appreciate it. And you're right about that. If you see other people struggling, how to engage with them. I'm a long time since I was in early careers, but I certainly appreciated when people could see that I needed help, or just being able to reach out to other experts, such as yourself and others, to be able to say, I've got a problem and I'm not entirely sure what to do with it. Is a lot harder, I think, over Teams and stuff like that than it is just when you're just actually, can I sit on your desk? Can I just have 5 minutes? So yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? There's definitely lots of pros and cons to making it all work. But also the technology has helped quite a lot, I think, as well. The evolution of Teams and Zoom and all them sort of things.
Yeah, of course, and I think the other thing is that graduates that are coming through now, they spent their university years working remotely, So the working remotely is not new to them. They've kind of adapted with it, and being at that age, they perhaps have adapted to it very readily. And they did their learning at university remotely, so they do sort of understand and have their strategies to get the information they need and to network with their peers, with their peer group remotely. So it might just be a view of an old timer like me that it is very different in the last 5 years compared with what it was for 35 years before that. But for the new grads, it's for them it's normal.
Yeah, no, that's true, and that's a really good point to make. Right, so I think we're going to chat about, or I could chat about this sort of stuff for ages, but really what I want to get stuck into is your background as a president. What have you achieved and what have you enjoyed? So we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back after this.
You are listening to 1202, the Human Factors podcast. We wanted to take the opportunity to say thank you for your support. You can help further by rating us through your podcast provider, sharing us through social media, and telling your friends and colleagues. Let's work together in raising awareness of the value in putting users at the center of what we do.
And welcome back. I'm here with Martin Thody, the current president of the Chartered Institute of Ergonomics and Human Factors. So, Martin, why did you want to take on that crazy role of president? What was your motivation?
That's a really good question, Barry, and I've been asked it by different people, both within the profession, friends, family, etc. It kind of probably goes back to about 20 years ago. Maybe longer than that, perhaps even back to my first few conferences that I attended back in the late 80s. I think 1988 was the first Ergonomics Society conference that I attended. And I was kind of in awe of the older generation at the time. And, I had the opportunity to go to those conferences, and I basically stood and did an awful lot of listening. I didn't get involved actively in too many conversations, but I stood there and I looked at these people and listened to what they had to say and sort of how accomplished they were. And that inspired me. And from perhaps not immediately that time, but probably about 30 years ago, I thought to myself, well, if I'm going to aspire to be like these people, then there's the potential for me to be like these people. And being president is, in my mind, was sort of the pinnacle of that. And it's something that probably over the last 10 years I've thought about more and more seriously. And then I remember that you and I had a conversation in the office one evening when everyone else had gone home. And I managed to convince you to put your name forward. But that kind of cemented, in fact, it was that conversation that sort of cemented in my mind that one day I would certainly be putting in a nomination for it. And been lucky enough to be chosen and been able to fulfill it. So I don't know how you found it, but I found it to be quite a humbling experience. Carry an awful lot of responsibility. You look back at previous presidents and you're sort of standing on the shoulders of giants kind of thing. And certainly in the beginning, there was an element of imposter syndrome in that first year as president-elect. You're thinking, what on earth have I done here? Especially following the likes of yourself and then Mark. And you think, can I do this? But you get in the chair and it kind of works itself out in a way.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, when you reflect back, I remember having that feeling as well. So my first few conferences going, and you see the people up there giving, a conference, giving the welcoming speech or doing the awards and things like that. And I certainly sat there going, oh God, I could never do that. I'm nowhere near as good as these people, because these are like really good people. You've got the likes of Sarah Sharples and such standing up there. I'd sort of think, put on a pedestal as being amazing. And then when you're right, we had that conversation, and I remember saying to you, I'm assuming you're going to be doing this soon, because you're one of these sort of people I admire and think that set a high standard for human factors. And you turned around to me and they said, well, I'd be expecting you to be doing the same. And up until that point, I'd never thought that was even in my wheelhouse for doing that sort of thing. But it just shows that we need to talk to people to make them realize that this sort of thing, it is people like us, and everybody who stands on them stages, sits in them committees, it's people like us, and only we can shape it. But it is an interesting perspective, I think. I mean, how did you feel? I thoroughly enjoyed listening to your opening speech at conference last year. How did you feel when you first stood up there and you basically grasped the lectern and you had everybody in front of you? How was that for you?
So while I was sitting in the front row, while Mark, obviously the previous president, went up on stage first to sort of say his thanks and then to hand over the baton to me. While I was sitting in that front row, I was jelly. I was a bag of surprise. But as soon as I walked up on the stage, I was fine. And then looking, as you say, I grasped the lectern with both hands. I had a little think about what I was going to say, but I looked out in the audience, and there were, 350 people in the audience, and dotted around throughout the audience were people I knew, friends and colleagues that I'd known for years. I was just talking to friends. That was the way that, and from that point, I just relaxed, and I think that there was some key things that I wanted to mention in the opening address, and I'm not sure I said everything that I had written on the piece of paper, but I think I covered the key things, and it felt very, very comfortable, and again, it was a little bit bittersweet because my dad passed away the year before. He was still alive when I became president-elect. But he actually passed away 2 days before the first council meeting that we attended in June. So that was quite difficult, but because I know that he would have been extremely proud for me to do that, and that's kind of carried through a little bit with the articles that I've written for the Ergonomist. I've sent copies of those to my mum. And she's been, like mums are, this is fantastic. Haven't you done a great job? But I would have got much more considered feedback from my dad, and I perhaps would have sought his counsel as well through the presidency. But I think that that opening speech, it was really uplifting. I mean, I was bouncing when I came off the stage, and for the rest of the conference, and my conference experience last year was very different from what it had been in the past. I spent very little time in the lectures, in listening to presentations. All of my time was spent in sidebar meetings, just talking to people. Some people I'd met and knew from many years ago, but also many people that I'd never met before, and that meant a great deal to me as well. That the people that I'd never met were looking to engage and talk. So
it just makes conversations a little bit easier when everybody knows who you are, because so that makes that sort of thing. But you're right, the ability to or the opportunity to engage with people and everybody. I mean, it is one of the things that I say about the Ergonomics conference over and above any other conference you go to. It is fundamentally a very friendly conference. It is, nobody's out to sabotage or anything like that, or at least not overtly, not that I've ever noticed. It is one of these things that you can go and chat to anybody, but to be able to stand up in front of everybody and basically say, hi, I'm putting myself forward, or put myself forward to work with you this year, I think is fantastic. So you have been, it's nearly a year now in post. You've got the first quarter of this year around left to go. So far, what's been the most interesting thing interesting things that you've had to do?
Again, I think that's a really interesting question. It's very difficult to pin it down as well. I think one of the things that's been most rewarding is having that opportunity. And again, this might sound a bit trite, but having that opportunity to really give back. And one of the motivations for actually standing as president is that the institute has always been there for me. It's felt like home, in a sort of professional home, and that's been very rewarding to basically be the head of the household for a short period of time. But in terms of what's been surprising within the institute itself, being on council and particularly on exec, you get to see under the bonnet, and particularly on exec or exec committee, discussions that I was completely unaware of that would be happening in our organisation. And again, half of me is thinking, well, it would have been quite interesting as a member to understand what was going on. But then on the other hand, when you get into the nitty gritty, you think actually the membership don't need to know this in a lot of cases, and that they do need to know gets shared through at the moment through Ben's articles anyway. So that's been really interesting. And the other thing I think that's been surprising has actually been outside of the institute itself, but has been enabled through me being president. And that's little things. Well, they might appear a little bit, but they've felt quite big to me. Things like I was invited to speak at the local branch of the Royal Institute of Naval Architects because I was president, which in a way was quite amusing because the person that organises that branch, I'd been working with them for nearly 10 years, and you're president, so can you come and talk to us as president, not can you come and talk to us as Martin Thody? So no, I mean, nothing changed from a year ago to now, but I have a label, and that in itself is really good, that you're invited, you get those opportunities because of the role that you hold. So that's been really enjoyable. And there's been some other examples as well where similar things have happened. I've been asked to go and talk to groups because of the role that I'm in, and that's been fantastic. It's an opportunity, isn't it, to spread the word of the institute, promote the discipline, and because you're being invited, people listen, which is hugely powerful and rewarding. And then within work, I have to say that my immediate management, but also all the way up to director level, have been hugely supportive of me in the role. In a way, I've been sort of held up as their poster boy. But again, that's absolutely great because it's enabled me the opportunity to promote the discipline within the organisation, be engaged at that director level, and really helping us move towards integrating human factors into the way that the business operates, not just into the design of the products that we build. And that's opening doors for other people as well, which again is really rewarding. And yeah, it's kind of all positive, really.
So when you went into this, and And no is a perfectly adequate answer. But did you have an agenda, or did you have something in there that you think, I want to achieve this, I want to change this? Did you have anything like that on your mind as you started your role?
I did, and so that was to, and it's kind of tied in with I think something that we're going to talk about a little bit later, which is the challenges and threats. One of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to increase the level of engagement with the next generation, and specifically improve and increase the level of engagement that we had with the universities that provide our accredited qualifying courses, and with the students that are on those courses. Bring them into the fold as early as possible. And I've been working with Nora and with Sam, and they've developed a sort of strategic direction to enable that. And towards the end of February, I've been invited on their behalf to talk to a group of students as president. I'm also going down to Loughborough again in February, same week, different group, again to go talk to their group of students, again as president. And I think to be on the receiving end of that as a student, again, not because it's me, but you got the president of the professional society, professional institute, turning up, giving their time to talk to you, and an opportunity there to bring those people into the fold early, and hopefully they'll stick and stay with the institute.
So you mentioned earlier about being able to see under the bonnet in a way that a normal member doesn't necessarily do it. Do you see the CIEHF now in a different light than you did before?
I don't know that I do. I have a better understanding, or a deeper understanding of what it takes to run the organisation, and I'm sure you'd agree from your experience as a president. But we all within the institute have to take our hat off to Tina and her team. They have a small team, and they together they run the organisation, they make it run like clockwork. And they deserve ultimate praise for the way that they run the institute. But and that's again been a bit of a privilege to see a little bit more, or actually quite a lot more, about what they actually do with such a small team. So that's been really, really good to see.
So you also mentioned about threats and challenges that we're facing. As a profession, what do you think we now need to be looking at? What do we need to be hitting?
So I think there's two things that I have in my mind. One is the demand for human factors professionals is continually increasing. Quite a large number of active membership are like myself, similar age to myself, probably going to be retiring in the next 5 or so years. But where are the people coming in behind to grow the numbers, but also to develop that technical competence and proficiency, particularly as we've mentioned earlier with the sort of limitations, if you like, of passing that knowledge on because we're not working together, we're working remotely. So that's I think something that I'm quite concerned about, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to increase this engagement with the next generation, to try and sort of grow that from the ground up. And the other thing that is on everybody's lips, and I'm sure the listeners and watchers of this channel, Barry, would be disappointed and surprised if we didn't mention AI. But I think that's a double-edged sword for me. I think there's an awful lot of talk about AI, and it's kind of happening in a, dare I say, an uncontrolled fashion globally. I think it has the potential to be really beneficial as long as it's used appropriately and with due consideration, and the users of it execute some critical thinking in its application. But the risk is that it'll get away from us, and the genie's already out of the bottle. If it gets away from us too far, we'll never catch it up. So yeah, I think that's a really challenging one, and we don't really understand as a discipline what we could or should be doing. We don't have there's not really a clear strategy for how we're going to manage integrating HF into AI, whether we're using as a tool to support what we do, or whether you're considering AI as a technology to be embedded in new products. And even that distinction, I don't think, is clearly understood by the wider population. We have people. Everybody's heard of ChatGPT, and I'm sure many people have used ChatGPT to help them write emails and what have you. But that's just scratching the surface. So yeah, I think that's perhaps one of our biggest challenges. But it's also really exciting. Over my 40 years, I've seen new technologies come in which present new challenges to the human factors community. We've dealt with those to a greater or lesser extent, and this is the next one. Yep. But I think, again, my sort of counter to my own argument is, if we retain our critical thinking as human factors specialists and work from first principles and consider those fundamental aspects of human factors and what it actually means, can these people with this training, with this equipment, do these tasks in this environment to these standards kind of approach, then is AI any different from any other technology in regards to how we approach it?
I think that's absolutely right, and that there is probably another podcast here to get stuck into that. But I've written in about this, about how we could almost be the enablers stroke guardians of good human machine teaming, and AI definitely falls into that. But yes, let's do, I think we should pencil ourselves in for another podcast, because that could be quite a long discussion on that. With your experience of what you've done as president, has your, I guess, ergonomic worldview changed? Have you found that you've had a great appreciation of what goes on worldwide with ergonomics more than you did before, or were you already pretty clued in?
Without blowing my trumpet too loudly, I think I was probably already reasonably well clued in. But that said, again, I experienced this at the conference last year, with that opportunity to talk to people I'd never spoken to before, from all sorts of different areas of application, whether they were early careers or more experienced people, just to learn a little bit more, not necessarily about the methods and tools and how we do it, but where it's being applied. It was broader than I thought it might be, which again is really, really encouraging. But I think it's still evolving. Our discipline is still evolving. Last year we celebrated our 75th anniversary, which is a huge milestone. But if you compare that with other engineering or human sciences disciplines, we're very young. We're very young, and we're continuing to evolve. And with this continual evolution of technology, we're going to need to adapt and move with that. So it's forever changing, which is hugely exciting for the discipline, I think.
I think you're right in terms of where we are. somebody coined a phrase, and I loved it, that we're still a troublesome teenager compared to other institutes and disciplines. And I think that's quite true. So you hinted there at potential retirement in a short 5 years or something like that. What is next for Martin? Well, being the president, you've said that this is like the pinnacle of what you wanted to achieve. What are you going to do with that experience? What happens next?
So I think for me, is the pinnacle of what I wanted to achieve with the institute. In terms of retirement, if my boss is listening, don't worry, I'm not going anywhere just yet. But I've had some conversations with my mum and my brother actually over the Christmas period about when are you going to retire. As just mentioned, my boss, she asks me, you're not going to retire, are you, kind of thing. So it's on people's minds, and my answer to this is, at the moment I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. At the moment I feel like I'm making a difference in what I'm doing, and at the moment I feel like I'm still fairly solid in my ability to think critically and make sound decisions. If any one of those three things stops, then that will be the time probably to hang my boots up and walk away. But at the moment, I'm loving it, if I can phrase it like that.
Yeah, and I think certainly for the discipline, the longer you stay around and contribute, then the richer the discipline is. So I think that's fantastic news for us. Martin, that's been really insightful, I think. And I think if anybody is thinking about putting themselves up for president or any of the other positions, do you think that's something that you'd strongly encourage, or would you encourage people to maybe go and do something else like knitting or something?
Well, I'm sure that people that knit get a great deal of satisfaction and reward from that. So if you can do your knitting and put yourself forward for a position on, council or professional affairs board, or even put yourself forward for nomination for president-elect. But there are other opportunities as well with the Institute to help and support and contribute, because all of those, things that were just mentioned and you mentioned at the top of the show, they're all volunteer activities. And some of them take more commitment than others. Most of the formal posts, are a 3-year term, which is not an insubstantial commitment. But there are other things that people can step forward and support. So you can become an assessor. If you're a chartered member, you can become an assessor of applications. You can become an assessor of CPD, which is just once a year. So there's other things that people can contribute, but I would highly recommend to anybody in the Institute that they get involved. At the end of the day, this is as you said at the beginning of the show, Barry, this is our Institute. It's about us. It's our, the way I see it, it's our home. And if we don't maintain it, no one else is going to do it for us. So, and I've got a huge amount, and you can be a mentor as well. That's another thing. You can be a mentor, and I've got a huge amount of reward out of where I've got involved, particularly the mentoring. If I'm honest, it's probably still my favourite part of what I do is mentoring people towards their professional progress.
Fantastic. Now, the last time we did these interviews, I had a different structure, quite frankly. Still didn't know what I was doing. But you've never had the joy of doing the final 3 questions. So we're going to take a final quick break, and then we'll get you into the final 3.
Just before Barry gets to the final 3, my name's Nick Rome. Let me tell you about this. Technology in our world is evolving at a phenomenal pace. And keeping up with what that means in the human factors world can be challenging. That's where Human Factors Cast comes in. Human Factors Cast is a weekly podcast that highlights and breaks down stories that are chosen by you, the Human Factors community.
New York State is giving out hundreds of robots as companions for the elderly.
Buttons in cars are safer and quicker to use than touchscreen.
A prototype just achieved a major milestone that actually fits the description of a flying car.
The show provides perspective based on experiences from different domains and different industries. We even cover some of the hottest conferences in the field. On this episode, we're recapping EHF, Ergonomics and Human Factors Conference, Neuroergonomics Conference, Human Factors and Ergonomics Society, UXPA International. Join me, Nick Rome.
And me, Barry Kirby.
Every Friday morning when Human Factors Cast drops on YouTube and your favorite podcast directory. And remember,
It depends.
And now I'm going to send it back over to Barry for the final three.
And yes, I'm here with Martin Thody here for the final three. So, Martin, the idea behind these is that we ask the same three questions to everybody who comes on the show. So, the first one, do you have a book or a paper that is your Bible that you constantly go to? And it could be technical or it could be fiction. What do you keep on going back to?
Okay, so again, it's an interesting question, and I would be interested if there's any sort of pattern to how your other guests answer this. But I'm going to start by saying I'm generally not a big reader, but I kind of refer and rely on my past experience in many cases. So there's some, because I'm in the defense industry, there's some sort of technical standards that are sort of kind of sacrosanct and referring to on a daily basis, DEFSTAN 00251 and JSP 912. But dare I say, that's not very exciting for your listeners. But there is a book that I really do like, and it's one of those books that I can you can just pick up and you can read a few pages and you can put it down and you don't have to read it in any particular order. And that is The Psychology of Everyday Things by Don Norman, which is gone through a number of editions over the years, but it first came out in the late 80s, which is around about the time, a little bit after when I first started. And it was a really interesting read back then, and it's still an interesting read, and it's still relevant today. And then there's another book which I'm using more frequently now in the last few months, because it was only published August last year, and I think it was published by somebody that you've had on your show, Marcin Nazarak, and it's called Learning from Normal Work. And I'm using that in my day job to help me understand what we can do with that, and using arguments from that book to help with conversations with people that don't understand what human factors is. So yeah, but they're both the books that come to mind.
It's interesting that with the patterns of books that do come up, there are some that keep on coming up more often than others, and it's a question I like to ask people, not just here but across the piece, because I think what people use as their go-to is either a sort of a guidance or it's an inspiration. You've kind of hit both. So it's either something that you keep going back to because it's an internal reference. I mean, mine's always been Stanton's the human factors methods.
Mm-hmm.
But again, almost like you described, you can go in, find what you need to find, maybe compare and contrast, and be able to take away what it is you need to do. I don't necessarily do the end-to-end reading. But Martin's book I haven't read yet, so I'm quite pleased to hear about how you found it, because it's from what I understand, he's done it in a different way.
He has.
More of a story than an instruction manual. So I'm as much, because I love this idea of communicating in different ways. I can't wait to get my copy and give it a good going through. So it's great to hear that positive recommendation.
Yeah.
If you could go back to young Martin, at a time that suits you, but maybe when you've left school or around that sort of time, what advice would you give your younger self?
Oh, now there's a question. I think I would probably say to myself, so especially early on in the career, not right at the beginning, but after a few years, that actually you don't know it all yet. It's the old Dunning-Kruger effect, and I've been through quite a few of those cycles on the Dunning-Kruger effect, and I'm sure I'm going to hit another, oh, actually, there's more to this than you think again. But I would follow that up with, but you can do this. And especially if you work closely with colleagues and understand that collectively you can achieve an awful lot more than you can on your own. I think I learned that fairly quickly, the team piece. But yeah, I would probably say to myself, just be careful that you don't know it all, but actually you can do it.
So we've also talked about, further down your career and the retirement word. When you get to that sort of point and you finally decide to hang up the human factors tape measure, how would you like to be remembered?
I think that's quite an easy one for me to answer, actually. I would like to be remembered for being calm and approachable. And that's kind of it, really.
Cool. It's, well, I'm sure you're pretty much there now. So, because I know that you're certainly somebody from my perspective who I like to come and chat to and ask advice. So I'm sure that's not a problem. Martin, thank you for coming on again and being a repeat victim of these questions. But I'm really grateful that you're willing to share your experiences throughout your career, and in particular about even your experiences of the presidency. You've still got a bit of time to go in that. Up until the next AGM and the handover at the conference. So if people wanted to get in touch with you in that time, how would they go about doing so?
I think probably the easiest way is to contact me through LinkedIn. I'm quite active on LinkedIn, and also if people want to follow the Chartered Institute, they have quite a big presence on LinkedIn as well. In fact, I think we cleared 12,000 followers just before Christmas, which is a big achievement for our institute.
Fantastic. So yeah, if you want to get in touch with Martin, find him on LinkedIn. Martin, thank you again, and thank you all for listening and for watching. Do like and comment and share where you're watching or listening to this. Let us know what your thoughts are. Let us know if you're thinking about standing for any of the roles in the CIEHF, and we will all see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. Please do get in touch with your thoughts, questions and comments. You can contact us on social media such as Twitter, LinkedIn and Facebook at 1202 Podcast. See you next time. And remember, it's more than just common sense.